What are some weird things I have experienced as a teacher here in Taiwan? Just to give you some background, my name is Prazi, and I am now a full-time YouTuber, but before that, I was a kindergarten teacher for like my whole life. It's what I went to university for. I taught kindergarten in Canada and then came to Taiwan to do the same thing. And over all of those years, I experienced a whole lot of cultural differences, a whole lot of things that I found were very different from teaching in my home country of Canada. And one of the things that I've noticed is just how quickly Taiwan is changing in all kinds of aspects, but particularly in education. And so some of the things that I might share in this video might no longer be a thing in Taiwan, but I've been teaching here so long that they were a thing back then and now no longer aren't. And one of the first things that I found were strange is, as you probably might have guessed, is physical education. Very important to Western people, to everyone, to the kids, to the parents, to the teachers. Extremely important to Western people, and it's very important to Taiwanese people as well, don't get me wrong. It's just they're put in a position where it's not really all that easy to make happen. I mean, just look around me, it's a bit of a concrete jungle in many areas of Taiwan. And so children don't have a lot of opportunities to get outside and play, because one of the things that comes along with physical education is exposure to the outdoors. And a lot of Taiwanese kids don't get that exposure. It's also very hot in Taiwan, and so kids aren't able to go out and play a lot of the times because the heat is just so intense. Whereas in Canada, where I'm from, it's very different. Kids are outside all the time. Whereas here in Taiwan,
most people, children included, are forced to do their physical exercise indoors. And it's because of obviously the environmental factors we talked about earlier, but also children here are under immense academic pressure, and that means that they're not always able to do physical education or get outside or do anything that's like fun, like play. And that sucks. God, I never actually do push-ups in real life. I was just doing this for the scene. I'm gonna stop now.
And that's just one thing I always found weird, is that physical education isn't something cultural, it's something important to everyone. And so while I understand the environmental factors that come into play when it comes to physical education, I just don't understand why it's been replaced with academic performance. And so it's very different to how I grew up in Canada. In my house, growing up, my father cared very much about being healthy, staying in shape, and so he had me and my two sisters in organized sports. Me and my little sister played hockey, and my older sister played a game called ringette, which was a popular game for girls back then in Canada, although I'm not sure how popular that sport still is. Some of my Canadian friends can tell me in the comments, but you'll notice that a lot of Taiwanese kids are not in organized sports. Things like tennis are becoming more popular, badminton, basketball are popular, but it's not like everyone does it. And it's mostly Aboriginal people in Taiwan that seem to be more physically fit, to the point where it's a stereotype. When I was teaching, a lot of the PE teachers, the physical education teachers, were mostly Aboriginals. In fact, if you look at the Taiwanese team in the Olympics, a lot of them are Aboriginal people. And I'm not sure if that's because they have a more rural upbringing, so they spend more time outdoors. And so kids all the way down to the kindergarten level just simply don't have time to play sports. But the physical side of things affects them. Like if you try and toss a ball at a Taiwanese kid, they won't be able to really catch it. It just kind of bounces off their chest and they try to wrap their arms around it. It's like you've just hit them with the moon. Just noticed how insanely wrinkly this shirt is. Like, I can't wear this. There you go. But one of the effects of growing up and having to play sports is that I had to wake up really early because I played hockey, like I said, and hockey practice, hockey games, tournaments, whatever, they happen very early in the morning, and that means I had to go to bed really early too, which leads me on to the next thing that I find really weird about Taiwanese education, because I think this is part of it, is just that Taiwanese kids go to bed really late at night. And it doesn't really matter what age we're talking about here, they go to bed way later than your typical Western kid does. And I know that there's gonna be Taiwanese people in the comments saying, you know, well, it's because they've got extra class, they've got bushiban or cram schools as it's known, they do extra English class, extra math class, extra science class, homework class, whatever, and so they have to stay up late because they're in school all day long. But I've noticed even my kindergarten students who don't have bushiban are up really late, like 11 o'clock, midnight, they go to sleep, which is crazy. And then they come to school really tired because they didn't get enough sleep. When I was growing up, I remember
it was like a treat to go to bed later. It was like when I got a year older, I got to go to bed a little bit later. So like when I was 7, I had to go to bed at 7 p.m. When I was 8, I got to go to bed at 8 p.m., so on and so forth. One of my memories is like being, I think it was like 7 or 8 years old. The sun was still up at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in Canada because it's sort of a northern country. My dad made me go to sleep, and I remember like kids, like the sun was up, kids were still out playing, and I was the one who had to go to sleep. And I remember thinking like just how ridiculous it was that I had to go to bed at such a ridiculously early stage. I always found that very strange because I just don't understand how Taiwanese parents don't go crazy raising kids that aren't getting enough sleep. That's just like a perfect recipe for having a kid who's not in a good mood like ever. And it affected me as a teacher too, because you know the kids come in the next day, they're tired and they're sleepy and they don't want to do anything, and it makes it really difficult. And I think it gets worse as the students get older because then they're in elementary school and they have to do a lot more things that are more academically involved, and that's really difficult when you haven't slept. Motorcycle time. Now there's a reason we're on the motorcycle. I'm going to show you in a minute while they're on the topic of physical education. I want you to pay attention to the people riding around me, particularly the women and their posture. You'll notice that most of them, if not all of them, she almost fell off the back, will have perfect posture, perfectly straight backs. You know, their heads are pointed perfectly straight. They just have amazing posture. And you'll notice that even when they're not riding scooters, when they're doing anything else. And it's hard to do, have perfect posture on a scooter, because it's essentially just a chair, right? Your feet are right out in front of you. You can move around, you can adjust your seating position, your posture, and they all have perfect posture. Look at them, their backs are straight. It's like amazing. And that's the cause. Why this happens is because, at least I think anyways, because of my time teaching in kindergarten, is that Taiwanese kids are constantly told to sit with straight and listen to their teacher. Now in kindergarten, at least the ones that I worked at, the students had to sit on the floor, which is fine, kids can sit on the floor. And my CT, a CT stands for co-teacher by the way, but they're called CTs here, and that's what I will refer to them as for the rest of this video, would always fix their seating. They're always telling the kids to sit straight, don't move, sit cross-legged. And I always felt so bad for the kids, because, I mean, you try that right now. While you're watching this video, try and sit on the floor cross-legged with your back straight and listen to the rest of this video. You probably couldn't be able to do it. Now, fair enough, we're adults watching these videos, and a lot of adults can no longer sit cross-legged, and they can't sit straight for a very long time. Kids can. You know, for me personally as a teacher, I don't really mind if my students aren't sitting perfectly straight. I just want to make sure that they're listening. And I guess the way to do that in Taiwan is to make sure that they're sitting nicely. It was just one thing I always found so weird, because everybody learns differently. We know this. Again, this is not something cultural. This is something we know just from studying development. Some people have to touch things to learn them. Some people are more visual and they need to see how something works in order to learn it. And then of course there are other kids who can sit straight, not move, and listen and learn. Not every kid can do that, some can. And for those kids, school is really easy and it goes by with a breeze. For a lot of kids, they can't do that. And you know, I've had students who, if I tried to teach them like something kind of boring, I guess, they would just spin around in circles, you know. I always found that very strange, because you know, growing up, I was not someone who could sit straight and listen for a very long time. I was not a particularly good student. I'm not sure what kind of learner I am, but I certainly wasn't the listening kind. And you know, depending on who you ask, you could argue that like that's a kind of a good thing that they have really good posture. It means they're not slouching all the time. But I do think though that it means that it's a lot of stress on their bodies, I mean like physically. And so one thing I noticed living in Taiwan is that massages are very popular in Taiwan. The Taiwanese people love going for massages. Massages here are cheap, and there are massage parlors like everywhere, which is actually kind of awesome. But I think the reason that massages are so common here, are so popular here, is because they always have such good posture. And when your back is always straight and your head's forward and you're in that kind of rigid, whoa, it was a big bump. When you're in that rigid position all the time, it puts a lot of stress on your neck and your shoulders. And so that can give you a lot of headaches as well. I noticed that Taiwanese people are often very stiff, often very rigid.
and it's just because of the way they sit. But while I am a Western teacher and there are things that I have with my culture and affect the way that I teach, I do still have to stay within Taiwanese culture and guidelines and still raise kids, because at the end of the day, they are going to be living in Taiwan and they are going to be following Taiwanese customs and cultures, and so I do have to teach that as well. I wonder this actually, maybe Taiwanese people can tell me in the comments, you know, when they go to Western countries, like, do they notice that we have terrible posture, that we're slouching all the time, that our backs are constantly bent because we didn't grow up with this really strict rule of constantly sitting nicely? I wonder that. Here's something interesting that I don't think a lot of Western audiences know, but here in Taiwan, they have the military in school. I'm not entirely clear as to what they actually have to do or what those people do. I think they're there for disciplinary reasons, or Honda scooter. I've always wanted to try one of those things. They look like a lot of fun. I think they're there to make sure that the students are behaving or something. I'm not really sure what the military does in Taiwanese schools. We don't have that in Canada. We don't have conscription in Canada. I tell this to my Taiwanese friends, and a lot of them are surprised that Canadians do not have to serve in the military, whereas Taiwanese people do. Some Taiwanese people can comment down below and tell me some interesting stories about the military being in school and maybe how that's changed over the years. That's a girl riding a motorcycle, it's so cool. That's hot. The other reason I'm on my motorcycle isn't just to show you Taiwanese people's impeccable posture. I'm gonna go see an old friend of mine who's Taiwanese, who recently came back to Taiwan. Took the bike today. It's nice out. It's rainy season, so don't often get to take the big bike out for a ride. I don't really like to ride this in the rain very often. Sunburn. Sunburn?
Hey guys! Hey! What the Did you feel my face?
Yeah. That was fun. We're gonna go outside. I wanted to show you this. This is nice. Nothing to do with the video, but that's a pretty nice sunrise, huh? Yes, it is sunrise. I got back just now, kind of a late night. But that's okay because I can't go to sleep today because I'm filming really early in the morning. I did talk about how kids go to bed really late here in Taiwan. So do I. Seems like a bit of that late night culture is rubbing off on me. Anyways, the next weird thing I found about teaching here in Taiwan, I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, we were teaching my students how to hold a pencil. This is at a kindergarten I worked at a long time ago. Kids can't really hold pencils with the pincer grasp like we do as adults. They want to hold their stuff with their full fist. Doesn't matter. We were teaching them how to write, and I noticed that when we gave the kids the pencils and some paper, my CT would walk around the class, and any student who was left-handed, she would take the pencil and put it in the right hand and then tell the kids they have to write right-handed, which I thought was so strange, and it became this whole thing. I asked her why she was doing this, and she said they have to write with their right hands in Taiwan. They don't have a choice. They must do this. And I didn't really like that very much because, I don't know, where I'm from you can write with whatever hand you want. Some people are left-handed and that's okay, but not in Taiwan. This is changing, obviously. I think students now are able to write with their left hand if they like a real cultural difference that I had to overcome. I just never heard this before. I mean, it didn't make any sense to me, but when I brought this up with my CT, it created conflict, which was the next weird thing about working here in Taiwan. This is my drawing, my little sketch. I'm still practicing. I still suck. Oh, the light's kind of making it look weird. But yeah, I'm still not very good at sketching. But, you know, I'm learning. It's fun. It's something to do. Taiwanese people typically avoid conflict like the plague. If they have a problem with you, the last person they're going to tell is you. And I've always hated this working in Taiwan because they'll tell everyone else that there's something making them feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's something you did or something you said, but they won't just tell you. They'll tell everyone else, and then you got to hear about it through other people, through third parties. And when I told my CT that I didn't like that she was forcing the students to write with their right hand. It was like this whole thing. And that's when I learned I should have went to my boss so that my boss can handle it with my CT instead of me just directly going to my CT. And that's not even just something about teaching in Taiwan. If you work in any profession here in Taiwan, you'll probably come across this weird cultural difference. Another odd thing, at least for me, because I'm from Canada, and our schools where I'm from are all very standardized. Like, you have a choice. You can go to a public school, which is non-religious, or you can go to a Catholic school, which is religious, and you have to wear uniforms, and you have to go to church. But it doesn't really matter. School is school, they're all the same. But here in Taiwan, all the schools are different. There's elementary schools that are better than other ones. There's high schools that are better than other ones. And that puts even more pressure on the students and the parents, because the students have to get into good kindergartens, because if they go to a good kindergarten, it means they get to go to a good elementary school. And if you get into a good elementary school, it means you get into a good high school, which means you get into a good university, which means you get a good job. And the circle is complete, and it goes around and around and around. So there's actual like levels to it. You can actually go to kind of a crappy high school or a not so great high school, and that's very different from where I come from. It's always interesting to see the pressure that it puts on especially parents, because they really need their kids to go to these really good schools. I'll just give you an idea of the pressure that they're under. I'm going to show you some cards. The students who wrote these, I think at the time, were like 5 years old. And look at the writing. Like, this is really impressive writing. Most Western kids are not able to write this well. This is like amazing writing for kids who are like 5, 6 years old. A lot of this stuff is hard for me because I don't really like putting pressure on my students myself, but it does pay off. The kids do have good writing. And it creates this really interesting dynamic where you've got kids that are Taiwanese who can read and write and do things in English better than native speaking kids can. So there you have it. Those are the things that I found kind of weird about teaching in Taiwan. I still really loved it. I had a great time doing it. I might still go back into it. I love teaching kindergarten. It's a ton of fun. Teaching in Taiwan is great depending on the school that you work for, obviously, and your coworkers, and there's a whole range of things that will affect how your job goes here, but I had a great time. If you like this video, please subscribe. If not, well, tell me how I can improve so that I can get you next time. Stay positive, keep your stake on the ice, and I'll catch you next week for another video.